They thought it was just another escape route, a shortcut through forbidden space, a desperate gamble to evade pursuers. But the moment they crossed the threshold, the universe changed. Dead ships floated in silence, watching. Shadows moved without light. Then the voices began, whispering, crawling into their minds. The pirates had entered the wrong part of space, a place claimed by something far worse than any fleet. And as their systems failed one by one, a terrifying truth became clear. This wasn't just a graveyard. It was a warning. Captain Graysnack had pulled off 100 daring escapes before. He had evaded planetary defense grids, tricked hyperlane enforcers, and once even managed to talk his way out of a firing squad using nothing but a fake mustache and an outrageous accent. But as the plunderer's wraith screeched its way into restricted space Alpha 7, even he had to admit, this might have been a mistake. "Captain, we just crossed the boundary," barked Vresh, the ship's navigator, his scaled fingers gripping the console like it was his last lifeline. The warning lights flickered violently as the ship's AI screamed in protest. "Warning, you have entered restricted space. Turn back immediately." Yeah, we got that," Genius Graysnack muttered, slapping the console. "What's the worst that could happen? Some ancient defense system? Automated turrets? Maybe?" The ship lurched violently. Something massive loomed ahead, blotting out the distant starlight. "Maybe we just die instantly," he finished, his voice dropping an octave. Outside, the void wasn't empty. Not even close. It was filled with wreckage. But not the usual kind, the aftermath of a skirmish or some unlucky freighter falling victim to raiders. No, these ships weren't just damaged. They were erased. The hulks drifted in eerie silence. Entire sections melted away as if consumed by something that didn't believe in explosions. There were no escape pods, no distress beacons, only cold, lifeless husks from a dozen different empires. Some bore insignias that hadn't been seen in 1,000 years. Pirates weren't known for being sentimental, but even Graysnack's crew fell into a stunned silence. "Well," he coughed, forcing a smirk. "Looks like we're not the first idiots to try this route." No one laughed. Then the ship's proximity alarm screamed. The screen lit up with motion markers, hundreds of them. A graveyard should have been still. But some things were moving. "We need to leave. Now." Vresh's voice was barely above a whisper. The engines hummed, but the ship didn't budge. Graysnack checked the status. Readout thrusters were operational. Gravity plating? Fine. Artificial intelligence? Still shrieking in binary terror? Yet something held them in place. Then, as if the universe itself decided to twist the knife, the ship's comms crackled to life. "Intrusion detected. Observation in progress." No source, no frequency. Just those chilling, mechanical words echoing through the bridge. A low, guttural sound came from the back of the room. Jorl, their weapons specialist, chewing on his own knuckles. The giant, four-armed brute had once ripped a Carithian warlord in half with his bare hands. Now he looked like he wanted to burrow into the floor and become one with the ship. "This ain't normal," he muttered. Graysnack opened his mouth to respond, but the ship suddenly tilted. Not under its own power. Not by any thruster burn. Something outside was moving it, pulling it, adjusting it like a toy being repositioned under a microscope. Then the lights flickered, and the bridge was bathed in an eerie, pulsating glow. The wreckage outside shifted. A ship from the Z-Core Empire model phased out centuries ago drifted closer, but not naturally. It moved with purpose, its shattered hull twisting, folding inward like metal remembering its shape. "Okay, that's it. I don't care if we burn the engines out. Get us out of here," Graysnack bellowed. Vresh slammed the emergency thruster override. Nothing happened. The screen flashed again. "You've been seen." Graysnack had stared down warlords, military fleets, and vengeful syndicates, but nothing had ever made his stomach drop like those 4 words. This wasn't just a restricted zone. This was a trap. And they had just sprung it. Captain Graysnack had pulled off 100 daring escapes before. He had evaded planetary defense grids, tricked hyperlane enforcers, and once even managed to talk his way out of a firing squad as using nothing but a fake mustache and an outrageous accent. But as the plunderer's wraith screeched its way into restricted space Alpha 7, even he had to admit this might have been a mistake. "Captain, we just crossed the boundary," barked Vresh, the ship's navigator, his scaled fingers gripping the console like it was his last lifeline. The warning lights flickered violently as the ship's AI screamed in protest. "Warning, you have entered restricted space. Turn back immediately." Yeah, we got that, genius," Grieznak muttered, slapping the console. "What's the worst that could happen? Some ancient defense system? Automated turrets? Maybe?" The ship lurched violently. Something massive loomed ahead, blotting out the distant starlight. "Maybe we just die instantly," he finished, his voice dropping an octave. Outside, the void wasn't empty. Not even close. It was filled with wreckage. But not the usual kind, the aftermath of a skirmish, or some unlucky freighter falling victim to raiders. No, these ships weren't just damaged. They were erased. The hulks drifted in eerie silence. Entire sections melted away, as if consumed by something that didn't believe in explosions. There were no escape pods, no distress beacons, only cold, lifeless husks from a dozen different empires. Some bore insignias that hadn't been seen in 1,000 years. Pirates weren't known for being sentimental, but even Griznak's crew fell into a stunned silence. "Well," he coughed, forcing a smirk. "Looks like we're not the first idiots to try this route." No one laughed. Then the ship's proximity alarm screamed. The screen lit up with motion markers, hundreds of them. A graveyard should have been still. But some things were moving. "We need to leave. Now." Vresh's voice was barely above a whisper. The engines hummed, but the ship didn't budge. Griznak checked the status readout. Thrusters were operational. Gravity plating? Fine. Artificial intelligence? Still shrieking in binary terror? Yet something held them in place. Then, as if the universe itself decided to twist the knife, the ship's comms crackled to life. Intrusion detected. Observation in progress. No source. No frequency. Just those chilling mechanical words echoing through the bridge. A low, guttural sound came from the back of the room. Jorl, their weapons specialist, chewing on his own knuckles. The giant, four-armed brute had once ripped a Carathian warlord in half with his bare hands. Now, he looked like he wanted to burrow into the floor and become one with the ship. "This ain't normal," he muttered. Griznak opened his mouth to respond, but the ship suddenly tilted. Not under its own power. Not by any thruster burn. Something outside was moving it, pulling it, adjusting it like a toy being repositioned under a microscope. Then the lights flickered, and the bridge was bathed in an eerie, pulsating glow. The wreckage outside shifted. A ship from the Z-Corps Empire, a model phased out centuries ago, drifted closer. But not naturally. It moved with purpose, its shattered hull twisting, folding inward like metal remembering its shape. "Okay, that's it. I don't care if we burn the engines out. Get Gettyu's out in Tahir," Griznak bellowed. Vresh slammed the emergency thruster override. Nothing happened. The screen flashed again. "You have been seen." Griznak had stared down warlords, military fleets, and vengeful syndicates, but nothing had ever made his stomach drop like those 4 words. This wasn't just a restricted zone. This was a trap. And they had just sprung it. Griznak had made a career out of running toward trouble. It was practically his job description. But even he knew when to turn tail. Problem was his ship refused to listen. The plunderer's wraith wasn't responding. Not to the controls, not to the frantic button mashing, not even to the good old-fashioned technique of cursing loudly at it. Still no movement, Vresh reported, his voice tight. "Engines are functional, but we're stuck." "Stuck? What do you mean stuck?" Griznak snapped. "I mean some unseen nightmare force is holding us like a baby slug wrapped in a gravity nuri." That was a new one. The main display flickered, the ship's scanners struggling to process what was happening outside. The ghostly fleet surrounding them was shifting, reorganizing, drifting into formation as if something unseen was arranging them for a better view. It wasn't just a graveyard. It was a display case. Joel, still chewing on his knuckles, pointed at the viewport. That ship just moved. Yes, we noticed, Grisnock growled. No, I mean it turned to face us. Grisnock looked. The Z-Corps warship, the one that had been a lifeless husk a few moments ago, had rotated. It now pointed directly at the plunderer's wraith. The ship had no power, no visible engines, no reason to move. Yet there it was, looming like a silent predator. Then another wreck shifted. Then another. And another. One by one, the lifeless ships pivoted to face them, forming a grotesque audience of shattered hulls and scorched metal. If there was an invisible force directing this nightmare, it clearly wanted them to know they were the main attraction. Okay, this is bad, Vresh muttered. Like historically bad. Like write a cautionary tale about this bad. Grisnock's mind raced. There had to be a way out. There was always a way out. Joel, can we shoot our way out? Joel checked the weapons console, hesitated, then answered in the most uncharacteristically timid voice possible. You. No, why not? Because our weapons system just turned off. Grisnock stomped over and checked for himself. Sure enough, every cannon, every torpedo, every single piece of destructive potential on the ship had gone dark. Not disabled, not damaged, just gone. Like it had never existed. A message flickered onto the main screen. Firearms not permitted. Grisnock rubbed his face. Oh, fantastic, we're in some cosmic no-gun zone. Would have been nice to know before we showed up. A sharp chime rang through the ship. The kind of chime reserved for important announcements. Intrusion detected. Observation in progress. Oh good, Grisnock muttered. I was hoping for more creepy vague statements. Vresh threw up his hands. Okay. Someone want to explain who's observing? Yes. Because I don't see anything except a bunch of dead ships staring at yous like we're a psychrazep holodrama. The answer came in the form of movement. Not from the wrecks this time. From the darkness itself. Something massive shifted in the void beyond the ship graveyard. No shape, no outline, just the sensation that something huge was rolling over in its sleep, and it had just cracked one eye open. The ship trembled. The lights flickered. A low, thrumming sound echoed through the hull, not from the engines, not from any onboard system. It was coming from outside. Like a deep, patient breath. Joel, normally the kind of guy who responded to problems by breaking them in half, whispered, I don't like that sound. None of yous do, Grisnock shot back. Try not to pass out. Not making any promises. Then, finally, a new message appeared. You've seen enough. The ship jerked violently, the view outside twisting as if space itself had clenched a fist around them. And in that instant, Grisnock knew whatever controlled this place wasn't just watching. It was deciding what to do with them. Here's the expanded Chapter 3, keeping it punchy, crisp, and engaging with humor where possible. Grisnock had always believed in two universal truths. 1. If you ran fast enough, most problems couldn't catch you. 2. If they did catch you, shoot them in the face and figure out the consequences later. Right now, neither option was available. The plunderer's wraith wasn't moving, wasn't firing. And if Grisnock's gut was right, wasn't even in control of itself anymore. Something else had taken the reins, and that something had the patience of a bored executioner deciding which limb to remove first. The message on the main screen still burned like a bad omen. You have seen enough. Yeah. Well, we'd like to leave now, Grisnock muttered, pacing. We saw what we saw, we're thoroughly unimpressed, and we're more than happy to never talk about this again. The ship did not, in fact, move. Joel, who had given up on knuckle chewing and moved on to chewing the edge of the console, pointed a trembling hand at the viewport. Captain, the ships are getting closer. He was right. The ghost fleet, the collection of dead and gutted vessels, was closing in. Not drifting. Not tumbling. but moving, deliberate and slow, like vultures circling a fresh corpse. Vresh was typing frantically at the controls. I'm trying every override possible. Every emergency protocol. I even tried that useless in case of sudden death button we installed last year. Nothing's working. Greznak crossed his arms. Okay, new plan. New plan. Joral's eye twitched. Please tell me it involves something other than dying. Absolutely. It's called Negotiate with the Invisible Cosmic Horror. The bridge went silent. You want to talk to whatever this is? Vresh hissed. The thing that just casually took over our ship, disabled our weapons, and eyes arranging a fleet of space corpses like some kind of twisted museum exhibit. That thing? Yes. A beat of silence. Yeah, we're dead. Joral muttered. But Greznak ignored them. He strode to the comms panel, cleared his throat, and activated the broadcast. Hello, big, mysterious, all-powerful thing that's currently holding us hostage. He put on his best diplomatic voice, which still sounded like a used starship salesman trying to close a deal. I'm Captain Greznak of the Plunderer's Wraith, and I'd like to formally request that you stop whatever it is you're doing and let these go. No hard feelings, no reports to the Galactic Council. Just a simple, friendly parting of ways. No response. He drummed his fingers on the console. Okay, maybe that wasn't persuasive enough. How about this? We are just humble pirates passing through. No grand conspiracies, no deep secrets, just good old-fashioned criminal activity. Very predictable. Surely not worth your time. Again, silence. Vresh leaned in. You sound like you're trying to sell insurance. Greznak shoved him away. All right. Let's try the mutual benefit approach. He cleared his throat again. Oh, mighty entity, perhaps there's something we can offer you? Information? Trade? The recipe for the best moonshine in the outer rim. Still nothing. Joral groaned. Captain, I don't think it bargains. Of course it bargains. Everything bargains. Greznak waved a hand. You think some all-powerful, reality-warping cosmic horror doesn't occasionally want a good deal? Then, at last, the speakers crackled. You have nothing to offer. It wasn't angry. It wasn't amused. It wasn't anything. Just a statement of fact, delivered in a tone that made it clear they weren't negotiating with the thing, they were negotiating with the universe itself. Greznak swallowed hard. Okay, I'll admit, that's not encouraging. The ghost fleet tightened its circle. The deep, thrumming sound outside grew louder. The ship trembled not from impact, not from power fluctuations, but from something pressing against it. Not physically. Not gravitationally. Just being noticed harder. The feeling was unbearable. Like standing in front of an executioner who hadn't quite decided which axe to use. Vresh clutched the console. We're running out of time. Greznak exhaled sharply. Plan A run had failed. Plan B fight wasn't an option. Plan C negotiate had just been laughed out of the room by the universe itself. That left only one choice. All right, he muttered. Time for Plan D. Vresh blinked. What's Plan D? Greznak cracked his knuckles. We cheat. There was an unspoken rule among pirates: if all else fails, cheat like your life depends on it. Because it usually does. Greznak's crew wasn't big on philosophy, but they were big on survival. And right now, survival meant pulling off the most ridiculous, improbable, and borderline suicidal move in his entire criminal career. All right, everyone listen up, he snapped, slamming his fist on the console. We're gonna do something stupid. Vresh didn't even look up from the navigation panel. Captain, everything we've done up to this point was stupid. This is just the grand finale. Glad we're on the same page. Joral, how fast can you rewire the manual thruster controls? Joel, who was sweating enough to fill a small aquarium, blinked. That depends. Do you want them to work correctly? Not particularly. I just need them to work at all. Joel grunted, cracked his knuckles, and immediately ripped open a maintenance hatch, muttering something about dying in a spectacular fireball. Meanwhile, Vresh was frantically swiping through system diagnostics. All right, Captain, humor me. What exactly is Plan D? Griesnock smirked. We steal our own ship back. Vresh stared. That's not a plan. That's a desperate statement screamed at the void. Same difference. The ghost fleet continued closing in. The dead ships now loomed so close that Griesnock could see scorch marks and melted hull plating, proof that whatever had erased their crews hadn't bothered with anything as basic as weapons. No, this wasn't the work of a fleet battle. This was the work of something far worse, something that had simply decided those ships no longer needed to exist. And they were about to join them. Joel cursed as sparks flew from the panel. All right, Captain, I rerouted the thruster controls to, the kitchen interface. Griesnock blinked. The kitchen. It was the only system not being interfered with. The only thing still operational on this ship right now is the button that makes hot coffee. Vresh groaned. Great. So you're saying we can escape, but only if we also brew a lat? Joel shrugged. Hey, if it works, it works. There wasn't time to argue. The ship was already shuddering under some unseen force, the invisible grip tightening. Griesnock bolted for the mess hall, skidding to a stop in front of the ancient, grease-stained beverage machine that had somehow survived more pirate raids than half the crew. He jabbed at the panel. Beep. Would you like to make a coffee? Beep. Engaging thrusters. With a sudden, violent jolt, the plunderer's wraith lurched forward, its thrusters roaring to life. The force nearly threw him off his feet as the ship violently yanked itself free from whatever eldritch grasp had been holding it. The ghost fleet reacted immediately. The wrecks snapped toward them, moving with unnatural speed, cutting through the void like hunting beasts. Vresh was screaming over the comms. Captain, we have incoming. I don't know how dead ships are moving, but tree definitely. Griesnock didn't slow down. He slammed the button again. Beep. Would you like a double shot of espresso? Beep. Activating full burn. The ship blasted forward, tearing through the graveyard, skimming past twisted hulls and shattered warships. Joel was cackling. ITS working. I can't believe ITS working. It was almost too easy, except that now the thing in the void had noticed them trying to leave. The deep, thrumming sound reverberated again. And then space itself warped. A massive shape loomed from the darkness, no distinct form, no identifiable features, just an incomprehensible absence of light, shifting, moving, reaching the ship. Alarm scream. Warning, hostile interference detected. Vresh paled. Captain. The navigation system just turned off. Griesnock's fingers hovered over the button. His gut twisted. This was it. They were either about to escape, or they were about to find out what had turned an entire fleet into lifeless husks. He took a breath. And pressed IT. Beep. Maximum output. Have a nice day. The ship detonated forward, engines roaring at full, reckless speed. The black mass lurched, the wreckage scattering behind them. And then everything snapped back to normal. The ghost fleet was gone. The eerie presence vanished. The deep thrumming silent. They were back in open space, their sensors clear. Joel collapsed onto the floor, wheezing. Holy stars above, I thought we were goners. Vresh was still staring at the scanner. What the where did I go? Griesnock exhaled, leaning against the coffee machine. Doesn't matter. He turned, patted the ancient device. Boys, we owe our lives to the single most important piece of technology on this ship. Vresh stared at him. You're kidding. Joel nodded solemnly. Nah, he's right. That coffee machine? Absolute legend. The ship was free. Griesnock could still feel the phantom weight of that thing pressing against his skull. An instinctive, bone-deep terror that no pirate should ever have to endure. He had robbed warships, outmaneuvered bounty hunters, and once bluffed his way out of a death sentence by convincing an entire planetary council that he was a visiting health inspector. But whatever that had been, IT didn't negotiate. It didn't threaten. It simply decided who got to exist. And they had somehow miraculously slipped through its fingers. Joel was still sprawled on the floor, panting like he'd just run a marathon. I don't want to jinx it, but I think we actually made it. Vresh, however, wasn't celebrating yet. He was too busy staring at the console. Captain, you're gonna want to see this. Grayznak dragged himself over. If it's another cosmic horror waiting outside, just know that I am completely out of ideas. Vresh shook his head, his face pale. It's not that. It's look at our position. Grayznak squinted at the navigation readout. His stomach sank. The Plunderer's Wraith wasn't just outside the restricted zone, it was nowhere near it. They hadn't just escaped. They had been moved. By something that didn't use engines. By something that didn't need to obey physics. The ship's last recorded trajectory placed them halfway across the sector in less than a second. Grayznak exhaled slowly. All right, I'm just going to say we should never talk about this again. Joel shot up. Agreed, we don't know anything. We didn't see anything. If anybody asks, we got lost. Got drunk. And woke up somewhere else. Vresh nodded vigorously. Perfectly plausible. Fits our usual behavior. There was a long pause. And then Grayznak frowned. Wait. Did we lose any cargo? Vresh quickly scanned the inventory logs. Nope. Everything's still here. Even his eyes narrowed. Wait a minute. That's not right. Grayznak tensed. What? Vresh double-checked the screen, his fingers flying over the interface. Our supplies didn't just stay the same. They increased. Grayznak blinked. Increased? As in, the universe just what? Gave us a bonus loot drop for surviving. Joel scrambled up and rushed to the nearest supply crate, flipping it open. His eyes widened. Captain, there's stuff in here that wasn't here before. Grayznak marched over and peered into weapons. Not just any weapons, prototype plasma rifles, high-yield explosives, and a disruptor cannon that could punch a hole through a dreadnought. Vresh whistled. Either someone just made a clerical error in our favor, or the void itself just gave yous a care package. Joel shut the crate, his face pale. Okay, nope. I don't like this. Why would some cosmic horror give us weapons? Grayznak straightened. It's not just the weapons. Check the fuel reserves. Vresh pulled up the diagnostics and immediately let out a strangled noise. Full. Completely full. He turned. Captain, we were running on fumes before we entered that zone. Now, we have enough to cross the entire sector twice. Silence. The same silence one might hear when realizing the universe was messing with you personally. Grayznak took a step back, rubbing his temples. All right, boys, let's review. We went into that place. We should have died. Instead, we got thrown across the sector like a drunken spaceliner and woke up with a fully stocked armory and unlimited fuel. Joel threw his hands up. Doesn't this freak anyone else out? What if there's a catch? Vresh folded his arms. Oh, there's definitely a catch. The question is, what is it? The ship's intercom suddenly crackled. A single message appeared on screen. Deliverance accepted. Prepare for the next phase. Joel screamed. Vresh nearly flipped the console. What does that even mean? Grayznak took a long, steady breath. He had been in some bad situations before. He had seen strange things, barely survived worse things, and pulled off stupidly dangerous plans that should have gotten him vaporized years ago. But this was new. New. And he had the sinking feeling that whatever had let them go hadn't actually let them go at all. Grayznak had exactly 3 rules when it came to cosmic anomalies. Rule 1. If it looks cursed, probably eyes. Rule 2. If it whispers your name in the dark, shoot first, scream later. Rule 3. If it gives you free stuff, run. Right now, all 3 rules were violently colliding in his skull. The message still flickered on the console. Deliverance accepted. Prepare for the next phase. Phase. Joel was hyperventilating. Nope. Nope. This is some divine prank, and I refuse to participate. Vresh was frantically typing. I'm trying to figure out where that message came from. Spoiler alert, it didn't come from inside the ship. Greznak exhaled. Well, that's just fantastic. So we're not only talking to something that doesn't exist, but it's also using our own equipment to use threatening love letters. Jorl threw up his hands. Can we just acknowledge the obvious? We're marked. We're part of some ominous phase now. I don't even know what that means, but I know I hate it. The ship rumbled. A deep vibration, not from the engines, not from weapons fire, just an unnatural pulse rolling through the hull like the ship itself was being evaluated. Greznak stiffened. All right, I need a status report. That does not involve the words unexplained or we're all gonna die. Vresh glanced at the scanners. Then I have nothing to report. Greznak gritted his teeth. He had survived mutinies. He had faced planetary death squads. He had once escaped an execution by convincing his captors that beheading him was against their religion. But this was a whole new level of cosmic nonsense. The intercom crackled again. A new message appeared. Coordinates uploaded. Proceed or be reset. Jorl yelled. I do not like that word. Why did IT say reset? Vresh's face paled. Cap N, we just got a new navigation route. And it's locked in. I can't override it. Greznak hated when the universe forced his hand. He especially hated when it did so without explaining the rules. All right. Let's assume that reset means exactly what we think it means. He took a breath. And let's further assume that the last people who ignored this message are now floating around as dead ships in a cursed graveyard. Vresh gulped. So, we follow the route? Jorl waved his arms. Or we hyper-jump in the opposite direction and hope the universe has a sense of humor. The ship rumbled again. And this time, something outside the viewport shifted. Or rather, the absence of one. Like something vast, unseen, watching. Waiting. Greznak's stomach twisted. He had been alive long enough to recognize a choice that wasn't actually a choice. He slammed his fist on the console. Set course. We're going. Jorl sputtered. What? No, bad plan, worse plan. I refuse to participate in this plan. Vresh was already activating the engines. I'd love to debate this, but I really like existing. And I feel like that's a temporary condition right now. The ship lurched forward. The second they moved in the correct direction, the rumbling stopped. The presence outside vanished. Jorl collapsed. I hate this. I hate all of this. I have never hated anything more in my life. Greznak just stared at the console. Because now, the message was gone. The route remained. The weapons were still there. The fuel hadn't disappeared. But whoever or whatever had been watching them had stopped communicating. Jorl peeked over the console. So, where exactly are we going? Vresh checked the navigation. His expression darkened. Captain, this route leads to human space. Silence. The kind of silence that comes when you realize you've just been drafted into something insane. Greznak pinched the bridge of his nose. Oh. Of course it does. The ship hurtled through space, following coordinates they hadn't set, heading straight for the worst possible destination. Human territory. The one place no sane pirate ever willingly approached. Jorl had gone from panicked screaming to quiet whimpering, which was somehow worse. Vresh was staring at the console like it had personally insulted him. This route is direct. No detours. No exit points. Just a straight shot and a maw of madness. Greznak exhaled. All right. Let's weigh our options. Jorl perked up. Yes. Options. I like options. Are there any that don't involve humans? Vresh checked the navigation panel again. No. Jorl slumped. Well, that's just rude. Greznak tapped his claws against the armrest. Let's break this down. We got thrown out of that nightmare zone with a fully stocked arsenal, unlimited fuel, and a preset course straight to humanity's front door. Someone or something wants us to get there. Jorl rubbed his temples. Right? And that's not terrifying at all. Vresh nodded. And given that our ship controls are still locked, we can't actually disobey. A new realization sank into Griesnach's mind. They weren't just being sent. They were being delivered. Like a package. Or bait. Joel had also figured it out. Okay, so, do we know if we're the surprise party guests or the party snacks? Vresh checked the long-range scanners. His expression turned to stone. Captain, we're about to drop out of FTL. Griesnach sat up. Weapons. Vresh checked the systems. Online. More than we should have, which is worrying. Joel crossed his arms. We're in a mystery box scenario, aren't we? We have no clue what's waiting. We have a bunch of loot we didn't ask for. And we're either about to be rich or extremely dead. Griesnach sighed. Sounds like a normal Tuesday. The ship shuddered as it exited FTL. For a brief moment. All was quiet. Then, the view filled with ships. Massive, heavily armed, human warships. Dozens of them. Each one angled directly at them. Joel's jaw unhinged. Come on. Vresh froze. Captain, we are surrounded. Griesnach's mind raced. Every ship in view was human-made battle cruisers, dreadnoughts, a carrier big enough to block out a moon. The plunderer's wraith had just been gift-wrapped and hand-delivered to the deadliest military force in the sector. And humans were not known for their patience. The intercom crackled. A transmission forced its way through their systems, overriding everything. A voice, calm, level, distinctly human, spoke. Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted space. Power down all systems and prepare for boarding. Griesnach winced. Joel threw up his hands. Great, fantastic. We've been sent to the only species that treats pirates like puzzle pieces, and they love taking things apart. Vresh checked the weapons. Well, we could fight. Joel wheeled on him. Fight. Fight. Dio, you have a head injury. Look outside. Griesnach knew one absolute truth about humans. When they told you to stand down, you listened. Because the alternative was less negotiation and more being vaporized. Cut the engines. Power down weapons. Let's not give them a reason to turn you into space dust. Joel raised a finger. Cap'n, what if they just do it anyway? Griesnach grunted. Then we die knowing we didn't annoy them first. Joel threw up his arms. Oh, well, in that case, I feel so much better. The ship powered down. The human fleet did not fire. Instead, the transmission resumed. You are carrying unauthorized cargo. Stand by for inspection. Joel froze. Wait. Which cargo? The stuff we actually stole, or the stuff the universe cursed is with? Vresh checked the manifest. His eyes narrowed. It's highlighting the weapons that weren't ours. Griesnach leaned forward. Okay. New theory. What if we weren't being sent to the humans? What if we were being sent by the humans? Silence. Joel blinked. Wait. You're saying humans set this up? Vresh frowned. If that's true, it means we just became the unluckiest smugglers in the galaxy. Griesnach's claws tapped against the console. Something bigger was happening here. Something terrifying. Because if humans had orchestrated this, it meant one thing. They had access to whatever was inside that anomaly. And they had just tested it on pirates. Griesnach leaned back, exhaling slowly. All right, boys. Let's try not to look too guilty. Joel clutched his face. We're pirates. We're always guilty. The human boarding craft approached. And Griesnach had the horrible feeling that this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.